head with it till the bartender tried to shoot me with a sawed-off shotgun. I grabbed the barrel, and the charge just busted a shelf load of whiskey bottles, and I throwed the shotgun through a nearby window. As I neglected to get the bartender loose from it first, it appears he went along with it. Anyway, he picked himself up off the ground, bleeding freely, and heading east down the street, shrieking, "Help! Murder! A cowboy is killing Croghan and Emerson!" Which was a lie, because Croghan had crawled out the front door on his all fours whilst I was tending to the barkeep, and if Emerson had showed any judgment he wouldn't have got his skull plate open to the bone. How did I know he was just trying to hide behind the bar? I thought he was going for a gun he had hid back there. As soon as I realized the truth, I dropped what was left of the bung starter and commenced pouring water on Emerson, and pretty soon he sot up and looked round wild-eyed, with blood and water dripping off his head. "What happened?" he gurgled. "Nothing to get excited about," I assured him, knocking the neck off a bottle of whiskey. "I'm looking for a gent named Jabez Granger." It was at this moment that the city marshal opened fire on me through the back door. He grazed my neck with his first slug, and would probably have hit me with the next if I hadn't shot the gun out of his hand. He then run off down the alley. I pursued him and catched him when he looked back over his shoulder and hit a garbage can. "I'm an officer of the law," he howled, trying to get his neck out from under my foot so as he could draw his buoy. "Don't you dast assault no officer of the law." "I ain't," I snarled, kicking the knife out of his hand and kind of casually wiping my spur across his whiskers. "But a officer which lets an old man get robbed of his buffalo hides, then laughs in his face, ain't deserving to be no officer. Gimme that badge. I demotes you to a private citizen." I then hung him onto a nearby hen roost by the seat of his breeches and went back up the alley, ignoring his impassioned profanity. I didn't go in at the back door of the saloon because I figured Joe Emerson might be laying to shoot me as I came in. So I went around the saloon to the front and run smack onto a mob of buffalo hunters, which had evidently been summoned from the racetrack by the barkeep. They had Bull Croghan at the hoss trough and was trying to wash the blood off of him, and they was all yelling and cussing so loud they didn't see me at first. "Are we to be defied in our own lair by a deleted cow shepherd?" howled Croghan. "Scatter and comb the town for him. He's hiding down some back alley, like as not. We'll hang him in front of the Diamond Bar and stick his sculp onto a pole as a warning to all his breed. Just let me lay eyes onto him again." "Well, all you got to do is turn around," I says, and they all whirled so quick they dropped Croghan into the hoss trough. They gaped at me with their mouths open for a second. Croghan riz out of the water, snorting and spluttering and yelling, "Well, what are you waiting on? Grab him!" It was in trying to obey his instructions that three of them got their skulls fractured, and whilst the others was stumbling and falling over 'em, I backed into the saloon and pulled my six-shooters and issued a defiance to the world at large, and buffalo hunters in particular. They run for cover behind hitch racks and troughs and porches and fences, and a feller in a plug hat came out and says, "Gentlemen, let's don't have no bloodshed within the city limits. As mayor of this fair city, I—" It was at this instant that Croghan picked him up and throwed him through a board fence into a cabbage patch, where he lay till somebody revived him a few hours later. The hunters then all started shooting at me with 50 caliber Sharp's buffalo rifles. Emerson, which was hiding behind a Schlitz signboard, hollered something amazing account of the holes which was being knocked into the roof and walls. The big sign in front was shot to splinters, and the mirror behind the bar was riddled, and all the bottles on the shelves and the hanging lamps was busted. It's plumb astonishing the damage a bushel or so of them big slugs can do to a saloon. They went right through the walls. If I hadn't kept moving all the time, I'd have been shot to rags. And I did get several bullets through my clothes, and 3 or 4 grazed some hide off. But even so, I had the edge, 'cause they couldn't see me only for glimpses now and then through the winders, and was shooting more or less blind, because I had 'em all spotted and slung lead so fast and close they didn't dast show theirselves long enough to take good aim. But my cartridges began to run short, so I made a sally out into the alley just as one of 'em was trying to sneak in the back door. I hear tell he's very bitter toward me about his teeth, but I like to know how he expects to get kicked in the mouth without losing some fangs. So I jumped over his writhing carcass and run down the alley, winging 3 or 4 as I went, and collecting a pistol ball in my hind leg. They was hiding behind board fences on each side of the alley, but them boards wouldn't stop a .45 slug. They all shot at me, but they misjudged my speed. I move a lot faster than most folks expect. Anyway, I was out of the alley before they could get their wits back, and as I went past the hitch rack where Captain Kidd was champing and snorting to get into the fight, I grabbed my Winchester .45-90 off of the saddle and run across the street. The hunters, which was still shooting at the front of the Diamond Bar, seen me, and that's when I got my spurs shot off. But I ducked into Emerson's general store, whilst the clerks all run shrieking out the back way. As for that misguided hunter, which tried to confiscate Captain Kidd, I ain't to blame for what happened to him. They're going around now saying I trained Captain Kidd special to jump onto a buffalo hunter with all 4 feet after kicking him through a corral fence. That's a lie. I didn't have to train him. He thought of it himself. The idiot which tried to take him ought to be thankful he was able to walk with crutches inside of 10 months. Well, I was now on the same side of the street as the hunters was, so as soon as I started shooting at 'em from the store winders, they run across the street and taken refuge in a dance hall right across from the store and started shooting back at me. And Joe Emerson hollered louder than ever, because he owned the dance hall too. All the citizens of the town had bolted into the hills long ago and left us to fight it out. Well, I piled sides of pork and barrels of pickles and bolts of calico in the winders and shot over 'em, and I built my barricades so solid even them buffalo guns couldn't shoot through 'em. They was plenty of Colt and Winchester ammunition in the store, and whiskey, so I knowed I could hold the fort indefinite. Them hunters could tell they weren't doing no damage, so pretty soon I heard Croghan bellerin', "Go get that cannon the soldiers loaned the folks to fight the Apaches with. It's over behind the city hall. Bring it in at the back door. We'll blast him out of his fort, by golly." "You'll ruin my store!" screamed Emerson. "I'll ruin your face if you don't shut up," opined Croghan. "Go on." Well, they kept shooting, and so did I, and I must have hit some of 'em, judging from the blood-curdling yells that went up from time to time. Then a most remarkable racket of cussing busted out, and from the remarks passed, I gathered they'd brung the cannon and somehow got it stuck in the back door of the dance hall. The shooting kind of died down while they wrestled with it, and in the lull I heard me a noise out behind the store. They weren't no winders in the back, which is why they hadn't shot at me from that direction. I snuck back and looked through a crack in the door, and I seen a feller in the dry gully which run along behind the store, and he had a kerosene can and some matches and was setting the store on fire. I just started to shoot when I recognized Judith Granger's Uncle Jabez. I laid down my Winchester and opened the door soft and easy and pounced out on him, but he let out a squawk and dodged and run down the gully.